Hi, welcome back to My Mom Life. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Jordan, and today I am showing you how to make these super delicious homemade honey buns. You don't want to miss this. Let's get started. Here are all of our ingredients to make the dough for the honey buns. I will show you the icing ingredients when we get to that part. You will need 1/3 cup of butter, which is a little over 5 tablespoons, and this will be melted and cooled, so we will go ahead and melt that here in just a second. You're also going to need some oil for frying, some flour. You will need 2 1/4 cups of flour, 1/4 cup of brown sugar. This is the yeast that I use. It's just instant yeast. I know it says bread machine yeast. It's just instant yeast, and you'll need 1 packet or the equivalent to 1 packet if you have it. It tells you on the jar how much. So 2 1/4 teaspoons of this is 1 packet. You will need, you will need 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, 1 egg, 2/3 cup of milk, and salt. We will need 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and also cinnamon. We will sprinkle this on our dough. We won't mix this into the dough, but about 2 teaspoons are enough to cover the dough once we have it rolled out. So there are our ingredients for our honey buns. Let's get started making them. So the first step is to warm up our milk. Actually, melt your butter and let that sit to the side to cool. That would be first. Second, we're going to warm up our milk. So I have 2/3 of a cup of milk here. I'm gonna warm it in the microwave in about 30-second intervals, and you wanna get it to about 110 degrees. I don't ever use a thermometer. I have one, I don't use it. If you have one and you like to use it, go for it. I like to stick my finger in, and if it is warm and not too hot, then I know that it won't kill my yeast and it is good to go. So I'm gonna warm this up. I'm gonna add that to the bowl of my stand mixer, and I have my dough hook attachment on. To the milk, I'm gonna add my brown sugar, so 1/4 cup of brown sugar. I'm just gonna take a spoon and kind of mix this up, and then we're gonna add our yeast in, and we're gonna let that kind of proof for a minute. So like I said, it is 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast, or 1 packet if you have the packets. Just gonna sprinkle that over our warm milk. If you do not have a stand mixer with a dough hook, you could definitely do this by hand. It's just gonna take a lot more of love, but the stand mixer with the dough hook is my favorite way to do it. While this sits and proofs for a little bit, I'm gonna go ahead and measure out my flour and salt, and then we will be ready to go once our yeast is proofed. All right, I am starting to get some bubbles going on with my yeast, so I know that it's good to go. I have my flour and salt measured out in this bowl. I have my egg cracked and ready to go, and my butter is melted and cooled. So I am gonna go ahead and throw all of this together. So what I'm gonna do is add my butter and egg and give that a mix, and then we will add in our vanilla while it is mixing. So we want 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Okay, now that I have my egg, butter, milk, sugar, and yeast all in this bowl mixed up, I'm gonna go ahead and slowly add in our flour and salt until we form a dough. Once this all comes together, the flour gets fully incorporated, we're gonna start the kneading of the dough, which just means that you're gonna run it with the dough hook for about 10 minutes until the dough gets nice and elastic and it's not sticky. So I'll kind of show you the process of that. So it is coming together still. There's a lot of flour still left around the side of the bowl, so I'm gonna work that in, and then we will up the speed a little bit and let it go for about 10 minutes. You're going to want to scrape down the side of your bowl just to make sure that you get all of that flour incorporated. So I'm going to give it a scrape and then let it keep mixing. Okay, my dough has been going for a little bit and I'm noticing that it is very sticky and wet still, so I'm gonna add in an additional few tablespoons of flour. Don't be afraid to do that with recipes when you're making dough. Sometimes you need to add a little extra flour or a little more milk, depending on the humidity and things like that. So I'm gonna add in a little bit more flour and then let it keep mixing. Okay, you can see that the dough is starting to form a ball and pull away from the sides. It's still sticking to the bottom a little bit, but when I pull up on it, it's not too sticky, just right, I think. So it kind of pulls off of my fingers. So that is what I'm looking for. So instead of dirtying another bowl and putting this in a bowl to rise, I always just use this bowl right here. Or the bowl that I made the dough in. So I'm gonna take just a little bit of oil on my hands and pat my dough down on all sides, kind of rolling it around in the oil and then up on the sides of my bowl. This just helps keep the dough from drying out and from sticking to the bowl as it is rising. So I have my bowl kind of oiled up there. My dough is nice and covered. So I'm going to place, I'm gonna place a towel over this and let it sit in a warm spot in my kitchen for about an hour to 2 hours, depending on how warm your kitchen is. So I will check it in an hour and we'll see where it's at. You want it like doubled in size. If you struggle to find a spot that's warm for your dough, then I suggest, if you don't have a window or something to put it in, which I don't in my kitchen, I have a light up under my microwave here, and I just turn the light on and set my bowl on my stove. My stove is off, my oven is off, everything's off. Just that light gives enough heat that makes it kind of a warm spot. So that's just a little tip. That's what I do. Okay, it has been about an hour and a half and our dough is nice and doubled in size. So I'm gonna go ahead and take it out of here and flour my countertops, and we are gonna roll it out into a rectangle. So I just want to kind of gather my dough like that. I cleaned my countertop really well, and I just kind of take a handful of flour and sprinkle it on my counter like that. Now I'm going to take my rolling pin and just roll it out into a rectangle. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now is when you take your cinnamon and you're going to sprinkle it over your dough. So I'm just gonna kind of evenly, you could measure this, probably about 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. I just like to do it like that, and then I will kind of use my hand and spread it out all over the dough. Now I'm going to roll it up long side to long side. So I'm gonna roll just like you're making cinnamon rolls, as tight as you can. And then once you get to the end, let's see, you're going to pinch your seam together. So I'm just gonna go along the seam and just kind of pinch it in the best I can to kind of close that seam there. Okay, doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of good enough to where it's not completely falling apart and opening up on you. So now we have our log and we're gonna cut it into individual honey buns. You could take some unflavored dental floss if you have any and use that to cut your honey buns. I always just use a bread knife though, because I never have unflavored dental floss. I always have mint. Anyways, you're gonna cut about an inch size piece like this. And there is our little honey bun. So what I'm gonna do is cut all of our honey buns out and then put them on a greased cookie sheet, and we are gonna let them rise again for about 30 minutes. Okay, now that I have them on my greased cookie sheet, I am just going to cover them with plastic wrap, and I like to get the plastic wrap on the cookie sheet like this. Oops. And then I take my cooking spray and spray the plastic wrap, and then flip it over. That's just the easiest way I found to make sure that they don't stick to the plastic wrap. So now that we have these covered, we're gonna let them sit and rise for another 30 minutes. Okay, it has been about 30 minutes. I took the plastic wrap off. I have my oil ready to go, so I'm gonna go ahead and fry up our honey buns. I have about, I don't know, an inch of oil, about 2 cups. It depends on the size of the skillet that you're frying in. I always fry in my cast iron skillet, and this oil is super hot and ready to go. So I'm going to just start by placing a couple of our honey buns in the oil. These cook super fast, so you don't want to walk away, and you're just going to fry them until they are golden brown on both sides. So get a spatula, a metal spatula like this one, and we're just going to flip them. Once they are golden on both sides, they are done. Okay, we fried our honey buns, and now we're going to make the icing. I have 3 tablespoons of butter melted, and this is about a cup and a quarter, or yeah, 1 1/4 cup of powdered sugar that I have in this pie plate. I think it's easier just to make it in here, and then we can dip our honey buns. That way we're not dirtying up anything extra. I have some honey here. We're gonna add about 2 teaspoons of honey. So I'm just going to eyeball that. That might have been a little bit more, but that's okay. Then we're gonna add in a splash of vanilla. I'll have measurements for you down in the description box. Sometimes I just eyeball things like this. You're gonna add in your melted butter. And then we will add in a little bit of milk if we need it to thin it out. Okay, I'm making a mess, but we're gonna add in a splash of milk. Like I said, check the description box for exact measurements. This is about the consistency that I'm looking for. So now I am just going to take our honey buns, and I'm going to dip the top of them in the glaze and then put it back on the paper towel just to sit so this glaze can kind of harden, and then they are ready to eat. Here is the finished product. These honey buns turned out so good. Don't forget to check the description box for the exact measurements and the recipe. I hope that you try making these. If you do, leave me a comment and let me know what you think. If you are new to my channel, I would love for you to subscribe and stick around, and I'll see you on my next one. Bye guys.